Hello. So in this video, welcome to Mindset Warrior. Uh, I'll be talking about Kenya today in this video, and I'd like you to sit back, relax, and listen very carefully because what I'm about to tell you is something that might get me in trouble, but I want you to listen to it anyway because it's worth listening to. Kenya right now is in a is being governed by a group of leaders, the UDA, the one that was elected in the previous election. The current, that was the UDA was elected, and currently it has morphed into handshake. It was not handshake. It was what was it? Broad-based. Yeah, that's the one. So I'm going to interpret our government. I can just call it our government because that's the one that is in Kenya. I'm in Kenya, and I'm going to interpret it from the action side, so that we can all look at it based on the action. I'm not going to quote anyone. She said, he said. Mm-mm. That's not my business. That's the business of mainstream media, as they so do it every day. I'm going to look at the actions. Let's start with the first action. The current action in the education sector. In the education sector, currently all universities are in a system called in a system whereby once you pay school fees as a student, that fee doesn't go to the university, it goes to a citizen. This is the case for all public universities. I'm not sure if it's the case for all public secondary schools and primary schools, but for all public universities, this is the case. Once you pay school fees, that money goes to a citizen. What is a citizen? A citizen is a portal where it is a government portal, the national government, where they provide services for citizens. So previously, previously universities, once you pay school fees, the money goes to the university. It doesn't go to a citizen. So each university collected fees and used it to run their operations. But right now, the universities, all school fees go to the national government. And then the national government provides capitation for their operations and the salaries and all that. And now let's go to the other one. That is the issue with the funding for students. Previously, government paid 80% standard rate to everyone. Currently, the government is categorizing students into band 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and the different bands have different terms and conditions. And the government also pays through those ways, whatever. Yeah, that is the education sector. Let's go to the health sector. Previously, you have to this the reality now. There's a previous and there's the current. Previously, NHIF provided services based on contribution. If you contribute more, you get better and more. You get assets. You get value for your money. And currently, Shifsha, whatever it is called, is in a way whether you contribute more or if you contribute more, you'll get the same service. But those that contribute more pay for those that don't contribute. This is in the health sector. And this goes to the government, and the government provides services to the Shifsha. So once you go to the all payments that are made at the hospital go to the government, then they provide capitation. So that's really once you go to the hospital, they process you, and the government pays through the Shifsha. Yeah, that one. And the mode of payment is not as the NHIF, which is was based on your contribution. It is you all get the same service, but those that contribute more afford those that don't contribute health care services. That is the Shifsha. Uh, so far, we have done education and we have done healthcare. Let's continue. is another one. The Adani deal. The Adani deal, the PPP. Let me call the Adani deal. The Adani deal is part of the PPP, private privatization. This is a deal where private parastatals, the likes of Kenya Airways, Kenya Airport, Kenya Airport Authority, are being put up for privatization. And as you all know, the airport, the KIA, was being put up for privatization through the Adani deal. And as you know, the terms of the Adani deal, they get 30-year lease, and then after that, they get some uh, royalties. For that's what it is, it's a royalty. And that's the Adani deal. Another one, let's continue. We have the, let me pause for that for a moment before we continue. So far, in the three sectors, the education sector, the health sector, and the private privatization sector. In these three sectors, the theme that is common is a theme where government provides. Government provides everything. The theme that is common is whereby government provides, and it and the for the healthcare sector, the the theme whereby in the NHIF you got services based on the contribution, and in the shift share you're getting, we all get the same service regardless of your contribution. That's transition from that's from the system whereby you get services based on your contribution to a system whereby you get services regardless of your contribution. That transition signifies a sort of a socialist kind of way, because the ideology behind getting service based on your contribution is a capitalistic way whereby you get value for your money. That's a capitalistic system. And a system whereby you get value regardless of your contribution is a social system. That is, if you look at the system objectively. And this is an analysis based on the system. I'm not talking about who made it or what, that's another discussion. And if you look at the issue of education, in the system whereby universities were paid school fees directly to their accounts, is a capitalistic system also, because then the universities are motivated to campaign for more intakes so that they can have more school fees payments, so that they can operate more efficiently with their own services that they offer to their students. But in a system whereby the university, all the school fees that are meant to go to the university are going to a citizen, and then a citizen provides capitation, that's more of a socialist system, because now the university doesn't get that autonomy of operating independently, in the sense that it's operating based on its capital that is collected from the school fees. Because at the end of the day, the people that have paid the school fees are the ones that are requiring the service. If you didn't pay school fees, you don't require anything from the university. It's basic capitalism. So you are motivated to get more students because they give you more income so that you can provide better services. But in a system whereby all the income in terms of school fee payments go to a citizen, that is a national government, that is an entity different from yours, then you are in a socialist system whereby you lack the motivation to do that. And and this theme of socialism that's emerging from these transitions. And let me pause there for a minute and continue the list. In a in an environment where the the parliament itself, the parliament has been whipped by the executive. It's not a democratic system in a way, because democracy is a system whereby nobody is working based on anything other than the interest of the people. And the national interest shouldn't be a word that is mistaken to mean anything else other than the public's interest. So currently, national interest has been misused to represent personal interest. And this personal interest is now when you're going to look at that personal interest, you have to go back and see how has that national interest been misused. Let's go to the parliament because that's the best place to see how national interest has been misused. When parliament conducts public participation on a bill, like the finance bill in June, and then they come to us, the people, Kenyans, and they conduct public participation, and we tell them, reject that shit, reject that shit, and then they go back to parliament, and then they say in parliament that he said, uh, approve that shit, eh, accept that shit. You see, that's a misuse of national interest because that's the national interest was reject that shit. But after being told that, they went back to parliament and they misused the national interest and masqueraded it and presented their own interest in the name of the national interest and approved it. And to prove my point, once they approved it, the Gen Z came out and we protested that shit, and they did what we were expecting them to do from the beginning. But the problem is the price we had to pay as Gen Z was very expensive for them to listen. And that is the point where they lost it. They lost it because we can't the national our that misuse of national interest, that misrepresentation. Once the public says no and you say that the public said yes, like for example, just to now this that was the national, that's the parliament. Let's go to the Senate. The Senate just the other day, Senate. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to be that petty. He said, she said, no. We all know the news. We all know what is happening. So in the Senate, the Senate conducted a bill. The bill was on the extension of the term limit of the president. And the people said, reject that shit, reject that shit. And then the Senate goes back to the Senate and says, I got overwhelming feedback from Kenyans, and 60% said accept that shit, 40% said reject that shit. That's another example of national interest being misused. Because now, what the public interest was expecting and what is being said as the public interest, as the national interest, and because the public interest is the national interest. Because what is Kenya without Kenyans? I mean, you can't say a national interest without saying the public's interest, because Kenya is nothing without Kenyans. So the national interest of Kenya is the public interest of Kenyans. It only makes sense as that. But sir, you see, once this national interest is being misused, it represents a transition where they are trying to create an environment where socialism can breed a tyrant. That is the thing. Because I'm quoting Donald Trump here. Let me just use one name for these people. Donald Trump in a video said socialism breeds tyrants. And when we look at these actions that are happening around, and we look at that characteristic of socialism emerging out of these transitions, the ripple effect of that is a tyrant is going to be born. Now the question is, does the Constitution, the 2010 Constitution, allow for tyrants, or does it allow for democracy? Now that's for the Supreme Court to decide and the judiciary. because and just going back a little bit, the other day the judiciary was given a task to describe to determine the public interest on the Finance Bill 2023, on whether the public interest was being used as the national interest or the national interest was being misused yet another time. And the judiciary say the public interest, the national, in according to the finance bill, the public participation that is represented in the finance bill represents the public interest and not the misused national interest. And that's now puts the judiciary on point because now they are now we are now questioning their integrity in terms of their constitution. Are they really representing the constitutional values of Kenya? Because if they don't, then that socialism will continue and successfully breed that tyrant. And I'm going to tell you that tyrant will be born. And once that birth is happened, it can't be undone. It will be years and years and years before that birth is undone. And that's a reality. And looking at this whole thing, and you think to yourself, where did it go wrong? Where did it all start going wrong? When did this transition into socialism begin? Because all these actions are leading to something. You can't take the assumption that all these actions are all unrelated and correlated. There is no relationship between this action and that. They're just all independent and completely unrelated. You can't take that assumption because that's a very ignorant assumption. The reason why that's an ignorant assumption because all these actions are being done by the same government. So there's a common factor in all of them. So you can't say that there is no relationship between these, and you can't say they're not leading to a conclusive and decisive goal. Because once the education transitions successfully, and now it is now a matter of banding, it's not now it's no longer school fees goes where it's supposed to go, and then the healthcare transition successfully, and then Parliament continues misusing the national interest to represent other interests, and then the Senate continues misusing the national interest to represent other interests, and then the judiciary doesn't stand up to represent the constitutional interest that is anchored on the democracy of, and the national interest of Kenya, then it's all a crumbling down and heading towards the birth of a tyrant. And sooner or later, that birth is going to happen. Now, the question are you Kenyans allowing that? Is that something that is accepted, allowed? Is this the new trend? Because if it is, okay, let's see how it goes. But if it isn't, then how will that be known that it isn't? How will it be conveyed that it isn't? Will this discussion be had? Like, will there be a meeting to discuss it, or will there be a referendum to discuss to reject it? How will this play out? That's the question that I'm wondering. Because when I look at this whole system, it's really not heading the right direction, in my opinion. And I'm using my opinion in this case intentionally to not mislead anyone because I have the right to have an opinion. So this whole thing is not leading in the right direction unless I don't have my Bill of Rights anymore. So, and that's another incidence of the Constitution being butchered out. So yeah, I don't know. This is something to think about. And I have put this out there for you. Think about it. If you're a Kenyan, think about it. Think about it. Peace.